silent mode. I'd like to start by introducing the members of the committee present today. Starting to my far right, Mr. Onishi, Ms. Willie, Ms. Poindexter, Ms. Ford, Mr. Yoshimoto, Ms. Eoff, Mr. Kanuha, and to my left, Mr. Ilagan, and I am Zendo Kern, the chair. We will calling the meeting to order. I'd like to take statements from the public on items on the agenda. There is 3 minutes allowed for testimony. At 2.5 minutes, we'll ask you to please summarize, and at 3 minutes, we'll ask you to please stop. And with that, I'm going to check into the various sites. Pahoa, do we have any testifiers there today?
Good morning, Chair. No, we do not have any testifiers for your committee this morning.
Thank you very much. Waimea?
Good morning, Chair. We do not have any testifiers for your committee.
Thank you. Hilo?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. We have no testifiers for your committee.
Thank you very much. And here in Kona, we do have one testifier, Brittany Smart, on Bill 87. Give us your name and you may begin.
Aloha, council members. My name is Brittany Smart, representing Big Island Ecosystems today. This is in regards to Bill 87, which allows mulch and composting on ag lands. From an industry standpoint, this is very beneficial in terms of siting locations. In terms of general numbers for the industry, this is not necessarily going to be beneficial for our business, as it means a lot of our waste stream would then be more localized in the communities it's generated. However, ECO is very strongly in support of this zoning change. In fact, in the Integrated Solid Waste Management Plan, Matt referenced this in his testimony to you a couple weeks ago. On page 434, under organics, the #1 recommendation is to promote both large and small-scale private organic composting operations by modifying the zoning rules. It's the #1 recommendation for this industry in the Integrated Solid Waste Management Plan. This helps keep organics in the area that they're generated. It helps prevent invasive species being spread, and it helps decrease the costs over long-term landfill closure costs. As organics decompose, they release certain gases which are then problematic in terms of the county managing. It is also going to decrease a lot of transportation costs. So there are a lot of benefits to this. This is an issue nationwide, and most municipalities are making this change. Thank you. If you have any questions, I can stay around for questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else at any of the sites wishing to give public testimony? Seeing none, that will conclude the public testimony portion. Now we'll move to referrals. Madam Clerk, please read in Communication 278.
Communication 278, Bill 80, amends the state land use boundaries map for the County of Hawaii by changing the district classification from the agricultural to the urban district at Punahou First, South Hilo, Hawaii, TMK 252315, and Bill 81, amends Section 25-8-33, City of Hilo Zone Map, Article 8, Chapter 25 Zoning Code of the Hawaii County Code, 1983-2005 edition, by changing the district classification from agricultural 1 acre, A1A, to single-family residential, 15,000 square feet, RS15, at Punahou First, South Hilo, Hawaii, covered by tax map key 252315, applicant Nobuchika Santo, area 1 acre. From Mayor William P. Kenoi, dated April 29, 2013, transmitting the above bills and enclosures with a favorable recommendation from the Windward Planning Commission. The applicant wishes to facilitate estate planning for the future by amending the zoning to allow for a second dwelling should the need arise.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So Communication 278 has two bills, Bill 80 and Bill 81. We'll be taking them separately. May I have a motion to approve Bill 80?
So moved.
Second.
Very good. Thank you. Before we get into discussion, I'm going to call up the representative and have him give his presentation, and then we'll get into discussion and any questions that we may have. Please identify yourself for the record.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of this committee. My name is Sidney Fuki. I'm here representing the owner applicant, Nobu Santo. Just by way of background, Mr. Santo and I go back nearly 40 years, so he's a very dear friend of mine, and I'm here just kind of helping him out with his overall estate planning purposes. He's retired, and his wife is also retired, and they have this property that was consolidated about like 20 years ago. So they started off with about 13,800 some odd square feet, and then they acquired a 1 acre property in the back of their land. Their house is situated on the 13,000 square foot area, and they eventually want to construct an Ohana dwelling on it. But to construct the Ohana dwelling on it within the ag area would necessitate the need for an agricultural farm dwelling. They have to qualify as an agricultural farm dwelling. The alternative was to maybe do an attached unit on their existing dwelling. However, the topography does not readily lend itself, to having a duplex unit. So one of their daughters lives with them right now and will eventually provide the necessary caregiving. The subject site is located approximately half a mile from the Ernest B. De Silva Elementary School. It falls all within the state land use county urban core. We believe that it's an appropriate land use zone change, as well as I think the Leeward Planning Commission and Windward Planning Commission and the county planning director also concurred with the favorable recommendation, and likewise we request your favorable consideration of this request.
Thank you, Mr. Bouquet. Any comments or questions or any discussion? Ms. Ford?
Mr. Fouquet, I'm digging through the file right as we speak, and, I found it. Everything around that area is RS-15. It means single residence, 15,000 square feet. Will the front half of the property where the house is remain nothing less than 15,000 square feet?
Well, the entire property right now consists of the area that's being proposed to be rezoned consists of 1 acre. The entire property, however, is maybe 1.5 acres.
Okay,
and it's split zone right now.
All right, but when I look at this, let me show the council what I'm looking at so we can all be on literally the same page. It's the yellow section that shows the RS zoning. The reason I'm questioning that, because you have this line drawn across here, and where the dotted line on the last page of the yellow.
Okay, got it.
You know what I'm talking about? Okay. It looks to me that is less than 15,000 square feet.
It is less.
It is, okay. Yes. That's my concern. I really don't have a big problem with this, although I have a problem generically with estate planning, the way we do it here. But right now, I just want to know, if we put in a condition that said this section up here where the house is will be no less than 15,000 square feet of land, is your applicant, will they be willing to do that? Because everything around there is RS-15. And as long as they match the surrounding property there with RS-15, I probably can grit my teeth and do this. But if they're going to make that less than RS-15, I'm having a little bit of an issue with that. Can you explain that to us, please?
Sure, I'd be very happy to. That line is basically imaginary because the parcel itself is over 15,000 square feet. The parcel is like about 1.5 acres in size. It's one parcel. Unfortunately, the zoning line created this
artificial line.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So once the balance of the property is rezoned to RS-15, then the existing area will already be conforming.
Okay. All right. So once it goes to the urban, which allows the RS-15.
Once it goes to urban and the subsequent bill is
then the imaginary line is gone.
Correct.
Okay. So now my question is, when the imaginary line is gone, and you're going to divide this into 2 parcels, right? Or 3? How many parcels?
At some point in time in the future, but not within the applicant's lifetime, but at some point in time in the future, it could be subdivided in the future.
2 additional parcels?
Correct.
Total of 3?
Correct.
Okay, and they will all be nothing less than 15,000?
Exactly.
Okay, so if we put a condition in here that said any subdivisions that go on this property shall not fall beneath 15,000 square feet, your applicant would be comfortable with that? I don't want, because it's urban, I don't want to see this go to 6 lots or something. And it's easy to say today that won't happen, but in the future, we always know that it does happen, so.
Well, it can happen only if the same body rezones the property, because right now, if the property is rezoned to RS15, mathematically, the maximum number of lots one can create are 3.
Okay.
So, in a sense,
my question, though, is I keep asking the same question. If I put a condition in here and say nothing less than 15,000 square feet per parcel, are you going to have a problem with that?
I think it would be a superfluous amendment, largely because your basic zoning, which is RS15, already governs the number of lots that can be created on this parcel.
Mr. Fouquet, I understand that you think this is superfluous. There's a reason that I have it, and it's because, excuse me, my 5 minutes is not up.
I know, I'm just letting you know that in Hilo, there is Bill Brahante and Darren Wright, if you have any questions that they might be able to answer.
I have no questions of those gentlemen. Thank you. Mr. Fouquet, for the 3rd or 4th time, if I put a condition in here, I'm sure the council will not pass it, but if I try to put a condition in here and say the lots cannot be further subdivided below 15,000 square feet, is your applicant going to be accepting of that?
Well, I haven't conferred with them, but I would recommend no for 2 reasons. One is that I think that's it's a superfluous condition. Secondly, that I've seen situations where you might have like just use mathematically. Let's assume you have 30,000 square feet of land, and you have an existing dwelling, and you want to do a 2-lot subdivision. I've seen situations where the lots have become like 13,000 square feet, and another property would be 17,000 square feet for a total of 30,000. And the reason why they do that is because the reason why situations like that have happened was because of maybe topographic conditions which render infeasible creating 2 exactly 15,000 square foot lots. Under that basis, the person would apply for a variance, and the planning director generally would grant a variance if there's topographic consideration, as long as the overall density does not exceed what is allowed by the zoning.
Thank you. You've answered the question, no. Thank you. I yield.
Any other, Mr. Onishi?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I cannot understand why we want to tie our hands for future councils and let them make the decision. Right in front of us is just the RS15. And in the future, say 10, 20 years from now, and this applicant wants to come down and do, 2 smaller lots, let that council at that time make the decision. Because then they'll know at the time of that how the growth in that area is. And so they'll be the ones that to tie it in. So I would never support any big conditions like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Onishi. Any other discussion? Ms. Willie?
Yeah, just would that, what Fresh is bringing up, would it come back to the council, or wouldn't that be something that just the planning director would decide in terms of a subdivision? It wouldn't come back to us, right?
Yeah, for rezoning.
Do you want to ask a question? Do you want to pose a question to Mr. Onishi? Mr. Fouquet,
or you could, maybe, Chair, you could answer that for me.
Sure. The way I understand it is if it's zoned RS15, they cannot do anything of greater density than RS15. That is the law. If they wanted to change that and do like RS 7.5 or RS10, they'd have to come into the county council and get the rezoning first before they could do a subdivision, which would be through the department.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion or questions? Seeing none, we will take the vote. Madam Clerk?
Ms. Ia? Aye. Ms. Ford?
No.
Mr. Ilagan?
Aye.
Mr. Kanuha?
Aye.
Mr. Onishi? Aye. Ms. Poindexter?
Aye.
Ms. Willie? Aye. Mr. Yoshimoto?
Aye.
Chair Kern?
Aye.
Chair Kern, you have 8 ayes.
Thank you very much. Bill recommendation. Now, Bill 81. May I have a motion to approve Bill 81 and close file on all related communications?
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Poindexter and a second by Mr. Onishi. Any discussion, questions? Seeing none, Madam Clerk?
Ms. Ia? Aye. Ms. Ford?
No.
Mr. Ilagan?
Aye.
Mr. Kanuha?
Aye.
Mr. Onishi? Ms. Poindexter?
Aye.
Ms. Willie? Mr. Yoshimoto?
Aye.
Chair Kern?
Aye.
Chair Kern, you have 8 ayes.
Bill 81 will move forward to council with a positive recommendation with 8 ayes and 1 nay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and for your understanding and support.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, please read in Communication 295.
Communication 295, Bill 87, amends Chapter 25, Article 5 of the Hawaii County Code 1983, 2005 edition as amended to include compost and mulch operations as a permitted use in all agricultural zoning districts and limited and general industrial zoning districts. From Council Member Brenda Ford, dated May 16, 2013, the bill would amend Chapter 25 zoning code to include compost and mulch operations as a permitted use in the residential agricultural RA, family agricultural FA, agricultural A, intensive agricultural IA, limited industrial ML, and general industrial MG zoning districts.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. May I have a motion to refer Bill 87 to the Planning Director and the designated planning commissions, both Windward and Leeward Planning Commissions, as provided by the Charter for review and respective recommendations?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Ford and a second by Mr. Ilagan. Ms. Ford?
Thank you. This issue was brought to my attention by one of the farmers in my district. Right now, I can assure you that farmers are not only composting their own green waste and using it on their own farms, but they will also collect green waste from other locations to use as compost. The problem that we're facing is that, according to the code, that is illegal. On my own farm, I can compost or mulch my own stuff, but I cannot go get anything from anyone else and compost it and mulch it. Nor can I bring in compost or mulch from any place else within my district. The current code says in order to do an agricultural process called composting and mulching, you have to do it on industrial zoned land. And this is ridiculous. We've all heard several discussions about composting, well, partial discussions. We've never heard from environmental management because they've refused to come forward. But we have heard from experts in mulching and composting. We know that mulching means I can take things in if I'm in that business. I can chip it up and 1 hour later I can sell it to somebody. It doesn't kill any of the pests. It doesn't kill any of the bacteria. It doesn't degrade herbicides, pesticides, and pharmaceuticals. Composting, on the other hand, which literally cooks the green waste over a period of time at certain temperatures, actually will do all of those things if held for a sufficient period of time. And it's fairly short for pests, like a week or two, something like that. And for herbicides, pesticides, and pharmaceuticals, it can be anywhere from 6 to 10 months. The problem that we have is this archaic code that we have for an agricultural process that should be taken care of on agricultural land that is unfortunately now required to be done on industrial land. By passing this change in the code, it allows small farmers who may be struggling to actually do this process for their neighbors, make money from it, and also prevent the spread of pests and other types of invasive species, animal and plant pests. This particular process is something that needs to be used in agricultural areas to contain the spread of these invasive species. We've all voted to...
Point of order, Mr. Chair. On referment.
Yes, Mr. Ilagan. Make it
On referment. Thank you.
Would you please explain that?
Well, currently on the floor right now is a motion to refer this bill. Thank you.
So you're saying that there should, because the motion is to refer, there should not be, the discussion should be limited to the referral?
That's correct.
May I respond?
Okay, just a quick recess.
Let's make sure the public doesn't know what we're...
Lobby for inconsistent motion to refer. Motion. And people can deliberate.
Very good. Calling recess, meeting back into order. That is fine. That is actually, Mr. Elligan, that's not actually exact. In the motion to refer, we can still deliberate and we can still talk about it and talk about the bill before it actually gets referred.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No problem. Ms. Ford?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe the public has the right to know what we're doing. So this bill will not only contain agricultural processes in agricultural areas, it will hopefully retard the spread of invasive species, plants, and animals. It will also enable farmers to make some money on their property no matter what crop they're actually engaged in. I would encourage that the council pass this referral over to the planning department, planning commissions, and when it does come back, I would encourage you to pass it for the sake of our agricultural industry that we are all supporting. Additionally, it meets with our solid waste plan, as read by Ms. Smart, former council member Smart. It also, I believe, meets some of the CDP requirements for sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. Any other discussion? Ms. Willie?
Yeah, I just want to ask Brenda, in terms of protection for neighbors who maybe, let's just say, we're in Koala Ranch or someplace and I'm doing composting, which would allow for human waste or animal remains, and my neighbors start complaining. I'm just wondering, I mean, does one need to get a special permit here? Would one need to have a certain buffer area? How do we integrate this into balancing promoting ag and promoting maximum use by the farmers and versus just sort of good neighbor relations?
Ms. Ford, would you like to respond?
Thank you. Ms. Willie, if you look in each one of the sections, you will see that the statement reads, this will become a permitted use. You don't need a permit to do it. It says compost and mulch operations provided the requirements of the State Department of Health are met. So you would still have to comply with the State Department of Health regulations. So if you were taking in human waste, the sludge, if you will, or animal remains or anything like that, you still have to meet the State Department of Health. So if somebody is polluting their area, then you would contact the DOH and have them investigate. I might point out to the public, if you've never lived near a piggery in an ag area, there is nothing worse than a badly run piggery, and that is allowed in agricultural areas. Composting is far less offensive than that.
Okay, but what, I'm sort of a home rule addict here, and saying you can go complain to the state, regardless of whatever it is, I'm not completely comfortable with. I just wonder, is there something that we could put in here that sort of would reassure me or people that have questions that on a county level, and it might be something that's even less than, in theory, the state could do. I'm not trying to oppose your goal, but I also want to address the concerns, whether it's ag tourism or anything else we do. There's a balancing here, and I just tend, as someone who's written legislation and state legislation, is that when you refer and you say you've got rights under some other department or incorporate some other law, people get lost and don't really, if they don't see the protection right there and where it's understandable, it sort of doesn't exist. So I do have a concern, but it may be only theoretical, but I do have that concern.
You asked me a question in there.
Ask if there's something that we can put in here. In other words, right now I don't feel I can support this without something more, knowing in here on a county level that we can address those neighbor concerns? And is there something that we can take from what it says in the state statute, even if it's duplicative? Is there something, I'm asking you, I'm looking to you for guidance.
I'm trying to get a breath in here, a word in edgewise. Of course, the answer is yes, we can always put more things in. I don't have any problem putting in protections for the neighbors. I would like to, I think you need to direct this to somebody who's actually an expert in this. Thank you.
Okay, Brittany, from the point of view of the unhappy next-door neighbor, I want you to chill me out.
Thank you, and actually my arm wasn't broken. I was just trying to get your attention. So I understand where you're coming from. The zoning aspects of it in the planning department do not have the capacity to oversee the entire industry as a whole. Neither does your Department of Environmental Management. In fact, DEM wants to get out of the organics industry, which is something that they've stated for a number of years. They don't have the technological information, they don't have the staff capabilities, and the Department of Health statewide is the regulatory agency. They have engineers, they have the experts that do it, and they are the ones that provide the permits. They cover odor, they cover noise, they cover air pollution, they cover groundwater, they encompass everything. So in terms of the permitting process and whatnot, it is your normal notifications. You know, it's just a standard process of if you're doing this, you have to notify your neighbors, blah, 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 blah. And then when you go in for your Department of Health permit, you have to actually put in a nuisance abatement program. And if that's not in compliance, then either your permit isn't going to get approved or it's not going to be revoked. One thing to keep in mind is every single time the Department of Health gets a complaint, especially odor complaint, they have to investigate it. And they do. They have to. I see where you're coming from, but I think by adding in such a thing at the county level would create a lot more problems than it would actually be solving. And in addition, you would have people regulating the industry that don't understand the industry or necessarily know how to abate the nuisances that are occurring. I would have concerns if a county level would be added into it, is what I'm saying, because the state is very qualified to do it. They're doing it already, and it would be the same as what's happening on general industrial land. It's just what you're doing is you're moving the agricultural end product area from the center of the urban core, because that's where most industrial areas are, to the outer skirts to the ag land, which is where all the ag operations are. So what you're doing is you're putting the end area right back into the area the industry already is. So that also helps keep the nuisance abatement down, because it's in an area where it's supposed to be done.
Okay, let me just say I don't have the same level of confidence in the state and have submitted complaints to the Department of Health that I don't feel that have been followed up on, and I don't feel that I can go and have some control. Now, let me just ask you, what if it had in there something like that you have to, in order do it, whether it's, I don't know, special permit or what, but that you would have to provide, put in here that one has to provide the Department of Health approval that would show the following nuisance plan, and this plan, that plan. So the person reading this or seeing it, if they said, why, this guy's doing this on my land, how do I know what's happening? At least he would see that the county has reviewed that all of those approvals are in place. Anyway, I need it to tie into the county somewhat, and I'm also not the idea that environmental management or the county or our departments don't want it is not an adequate answer for me either. So that's a policy decision that if that's so, I think that we should address it. So I just feel as the irritated neighbor, I want something on my county, and I think we could keep it somewhat simple. If I know they have to, I can go into the planning office and go in and ask, can I see a copy that shows that they've done all these things, which would include the neighbors and the nuisance abatement, and I can review it and have notice, then I'm comfortable. If I have to go call the State Department of Health and find out whether they're doing it or when and try to get through, that's not enough for me.
Can I respond?
So I support what you're doing, but I still need, I don't quite have the balance that I feel comfortable with for the neighbor. I'm going to yield, so I want to hear what everybody else says. Maybe others don't have the same.
There was a question at the beginning that I'd like to respond to.
What was the question? Could you restate it?
She was asking if what we would feel if maybe there was, maybe after the Department of Health approvals come through, if the county can build it into a special permit or whatever, and what we would feel on that. I would like to respond to that. Okay, I understand what you're saying, and I think that's still covered under the Department of Health, must be in compliance with Department of Health. If you have internal policies that maybe put in a condition on such operations, where it says once the Department of Health permit is received, copies must be provided to the county planning department and available for public use, I think that would be adequate, and I think it would still cover your concerns. And I would also highly encourage you to contact Department of Health and maybe have them be a part of the council conversation when this next comes up for committee, and have them available by telephone to ask them some of these questions. We work directly with Sulu in the Department of Health Solid and Hazardous Waste Branch, and she's very easy to work with, very knowledgeable, and very helpful. And I think she'd be able to help ease some of your concerns.
Okay, I just think this will go to referral, and that concern can be considered.
Yes, I see Ms. Poindexter would like to make some comments. If you wanted to have a second round, we can do that afterwards. Ms. Poindexter?
Yeah. I'd just like to say that I'm agreeing with Councilmember Willie, and the reason is I've been through it in Ocala with the dairy and Department of Health, and for many, many years we've been struggling with the odor and some problems in all of Ocala. And I can tell you the community is very upset with that. So I like the idea that the county has some type of control in this, because when we're dealing with this at the state level and Department of Health, it has not, we've been dealing with this for years, since the dairy has been in operation. And when the dairy came in, they promised us that there would be no odor because it was set so far back, and they're going to have all these promises that were not true. And the Department of Health, we keep complaining. So I totally agree with you, because we've experienced it in our community. And so what I did is I went to look up about composting and where they've done it in different areas. California, the state of California, they said during the past decade, some facilities have experienced problems with organics processing operations, particularly in chipping and grind facilities. Some of these facilities received odor and fire complaints that eventually led to site closures, site cleanup, and remediation requirements. And the remediation requirements, that's environmental remediation. So it's a whole, I'm glad we're going to be referring this. So right now the motion is to refer it to, can you repeat what that was?
Yeah, the motion is to refer it to the department as well as both Windward and Leeward planning commissions for their review and comment.
Yeah, so I'm supporting that to be referred, so thank you.
Very good. Ms. Ford?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is it possible, while the motion is to refer, which I support, of course, that we could postpone this and I could add some additional language to provide the protections that, I have no problem with that. Yep. But is that still on the table that I can do that?
As far as I know, we have, as we have done with some other things in the past, to try to get it taken care of here before it goes there.
So if, I want to wait for everyone else to speak, though, and then at the end I'll postpone this and add more stringent language for protection of the neighbors. Because, as you know, I've always been, any agricultural event, including ag tourism, the neighbors have to be considered. So I have no problem doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. Mr. Onishi?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would rather have it be referred to the planning commissions and let them get some feedback from the public, because they're going to be going out, and then we find out what their recommendations are, and then from there we can do any amendments to this bill. Because I think that's where the process could be. Something like with the ag tourism, right? What we did with that, right? We didn't do any amendments before it was referred to the planning commission, right? And then now we're waiting for that to come back, and then we might have some amendments to see what their recommendations was. So to me, I think we should just forward that to the commission and then find out what they want, and then we vote on. Then we can do amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Onishi. Any?
Yeah, I just want to say I'm open to whatever Ms. Ford does as the author, and I think that often the committees like to hear any ideas that the council has. I mean, if anyone else had other ideas. So I just want to say I'd be open to postpone, or if Ms. Ford's fine, let's send it on. I'm open to that as well. So,
Mr. Logan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support Councilmember Poindexter and Councilmembers Willie, and wherever this is going, either we are not going to postpone it for the amendment or refer it right off the bat. I would like to know what the council feels about what direction we're headed on that.
Thank you, Mr. Logan. Mr. Kanuha?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Margaret's statements were in the beginning. There were a few issues we had with this. Not issues, but there were concerns, and I have the same concerns. I completely understand what Ms. Ford is doing. I totally agree with doing as much as we can for our agricultural industry, and I'm glad this came up because it's really important for all of us and all the ag community. Personally, for me, I understand the idea of making a few amendments to it first, but I also want to hear back from even the State Department of Health, like what do they have? And maybe if it went through all these the planning director, we'd have more from what they have to say, because I don't even know if there's anybody here from the planning department or any of, but I'm currently in favor of sending it to the planning department and the commissions first and hearing from them, and then I think we would have a better understanding around the whole island about what this currently is. I mean, we had a few things like these small farmers the operators understand the principle of proper composting. I think that's a big issue. I know there's experts here and there, but if everybody has that opportunity, I think it's important that we get a sense of how will each individual farmer know how to, if they do want to get a permit, or if they do want to compost, do they know exactly how that happens, and I mean, what ramifications could happen? And I agree with certain buffer zones here and there. Neighbors are always important. So I'm currently in favor of just referring it to the original referral. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kanuha. Ms. Eoff?
Yes, I think we've gone over this discussion before, and we've done both ways. We currently have Mr. Kern's bill later on today, which we decided to postpone the referral to Department of Environmental Management so that he could make some amendments, because I think sending it to the commission with our amendments might make a fuller discussion there based on some of the things that we can do to clarify the bill. So I'm really not sure whether if it goes to the commission first then comes back to us if we can amend it. So I think to me it might make more sense to postpone it and work on it before we send it to the commissions.
Thank you, Ms. Yap. Ms. Poindexter?
Yeah, and when I spoke with the Soil and Water Conservation, right now they have exemptions where some farmers do have some composting going on, and with their waste. So they're doing it already in some of the ag lots with an exemption. So it's not like, I just want the public that are not familiar with ag, it's happening already. And I think what this bill does is allow them to take from others around them to bring in to do probably a bigger operation. So anyway, but my understanding from Soil and Water Conservation is it's already happening through the permitting process, or they go through an exemption, so they follow those rules. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Poindexter. Ms. Ford, then Ms. Willie.
Thank you. We can do it either way. I happen to agree with Ms. Eoff that if we can supply some recommendations for them to consider that they might not consider that unless we tell them about them, that might give them more to actually analyze. I think that's really a good move. But if you want to send it over with nothing on it, that's okay with me. If you want to send it over with some amendments, protection of the neighbors, maybe some boundary issues resolved, I have no problem with that. This is something that we as a group need to work on, and so I welcome all amendments on this to send over as something to consider for these planning commissions. I think it's a good idea, but I'll yield to the consensus of the group. It doesn't matter to me. But, let me answer one more question. Ms. Eoff said, and made a comment about a question, can we make amendments when it comes back from the commission? Absolutely. It comes back from the commission, it's ours again. And at that point, we can rip it apart and put it back together the way we want it.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. Ms. Willie?
Yes, I mean, I would prefer to have a postponement and perhaps put something in that some of the issues that we would like to have considered. I don't want to do any bouncing back like ag tourism. The more we can communicate, the better. So I just want to bring up a couple things that are really important to me. One is the, little red fire ant, did they take into consideration invasive species issues? Certainly, I wouldn't want farmers that aren't really up on the importance of addressing that. I know composting, in theory, you get rid of them, but often people do mulch production at the same time. The other issue I just want to bring up is the different components to organic waste. It might be that if this just said green waste, food waste, paper waste, something, I wouldn't have the same concerns that once you get into the human waste, biosolids, slaughterhouse waste, that perhaps there could be some differentiation there. Maybe not, but I just want places that are doing just green waste, I don't have the same issues. Whereas once you get into these other, I don't know what biosolids are, human waste, slaughterhouse waste, have greater concern for me as a potential neighbor. Thank you. So I would encourage the postponement, and perhaps if there are any issues people have, to add them in there. I often find on the commissions, they don't necessarily have in front of them our minutes or looking at them. They're basically looking for, okay, public, let's brainstorm this. So if anyone does have concerns, I'd appreciate including them, but I'll go with whatever the majority thinks again, too.
Thank you, Ms. Willie. Mr. Onishi.
Thank you. But if we do this postponement, I think what we need to do is have the State Department of Health here, DEM. I mean, we need to question them to find out what is the safe zone or what is the buffer, because we can put in whatever numbers we want, but how do we know that's satisfaction? Because of the smell. It could be like a mild buffer zone or something, but as Ms. Poindexter mentioned too about the dairy, the smell is so bad. So we can put in maybe 100 yards or 200, but will that be sufficient? So I think, we can postpone this, but at the next meeting, we need to have all these people here to help us answer these questions so that we can put in the amendments. So maybe, we should be postponed, but then at the next meeting, get everyone here. And then from there, we can maybe do amendments to this bill. But that's what I look at, because right now, today, we don't have anybody here to answer questions for us. And so that's where I don't think, we can, like I said, we can move on, send it to the commission, let them try and get that information for us, or just postpone it and at the next meeting get all these experts here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nishi. Ms. Eoff, are you going to? No. Ms. Ford.
Yeah. Well, I agree with Mr. Onishi as far as getting the experts to come to the meeting. As you know, I tried 3 times to get DEM to come here and give us a presentation, and they refused to come 3 times. I can't guarantee that DEM will show up for any meetings on this subject. They refused 3 times. I certainly would be more than willing to invite them and DOH to come in, but I'd also like the chance to make some of the amendments that have been brought up today that I think would make us and our neighbors all feel comfortable with this. We don't want to be causing a problem. We want to be resolving a problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. Ms. Poindexter.
Yeah, and the statement that was made that they refused 3 times, if I remember correctly, we were in the Hilo Council chambers and they were asking it not to be on the next meeting, but we forced it to be on the next meeting when we knew they weren't going to be ready or they weren't prepared for it. So the 3rd time, I don't consider that a refusal because it's something that we forced. So I don't want the public to hear that they refused 3 times, so that's a misleading statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Yoshimoto?
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yes, I'm sorry. I personally invited them 3 times, and they refused 3 times. Thank you.
Mr. Yoshimoto?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll keep it short. I believe we need to send the best bill possible, so we need to work on it here before we send it.
Mr. Onishi?
Yeah, I would suggest, Mr. Chair, maybe you can do the contacts to the State Department of Health and also to DEM and requesting them to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Onishi. I appreciate that. Any other discussion before a motion is made?
Yes. I would like to postpone it, and I'm going to postpone it. So I move to postpone Bill 87 to the call of the chair because I have to get DOH to come in from Honolulu. So, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion to postpone to the call of chair by Ms. Ford, a second by Mr. Kanuha. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll take a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion has been postponed to the call of chair with a 9-0. And I will take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion to adjourn by Mr. Yoshimoto and a second by Mr. Kanuha. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Meeting is out.